Year 1913. It was one of the notable years in the history of India. On one hand, Rabindranath Tagore became the first Indian come non-European to have received the Nobel Prize, and on the other, a revolution was about to happen in the history of motion pictures in India. Dhundi Raj Govind Phalke, popularly known as Dada Saheb Phalke, a photographer by passion and profession from Bombay, released the first full-length cinema of India, Raja Harishchandra, in this year. This film was a silent film, which means it had no audible dialogues or music, and it entirely depicted the story through the on-screen charades of the actors and the title cards in English and Hindi. Raja Harishchandra was a 40 minutes long full-length movie and featured actors like Dattatreya Damodar Dabki, Anna Salunke, Bhalachandra Phalke, Gajanan Vasudev Sane, and many others. Although Dada Saheb Phalke is considered to be the pioneer of Indian cinema, another passionate photographer from Calcutta, Hiralal Sen, started experimenting with motion pictures much before him. In fact, he is considered the creator of the first Indian advertising film. In the year 1903, he filmed a full-length stage performance, Ali Baba and the 40 Thieves, and some people consider it as India's first full-length film. Unfortunately, all his films got destroyed by a fire incident in his godown in 1917, and it left no visible record of his creations. The concept of motion picture probably was first conceived by the English photographer Edward Muybridge in 1878. With the help of 12 different cameras laid on the track of a galloping horse, he shot 12 sequential still images of the horse and then projected them one after another on screen, thus making the first ever impression of a motion picture. However, Louis Lee Prince, a French-American artist, was the first ever person to shoot a motion picture with a single lens. In 1888, he made the first motion picture film, famously known as The Roundhay Garden, in which he recorded his son, his father-in-law, his mother-in-law, and another woman in his garden at a place called Roundhay in England. Though it was a film of just 2 seconds, this film became very popular at that time. Another one of his earlier films is known as The Traffic Crossing Leeds Bridge, in which he shot the movement of carriages and people on the Leeds Bridge in 1888 in Leeds, England. Louis Nicolas Lumiere and Louis Jean Lumiere, who were famously known as Lumiere brothers, are said to be the pioneers of commercial screening of motion films in public, which eventually gave birth to the concept of cinema. On 22nd March in 1895 in Paris, at the Society for the Development of the National Industry, they screened a single film called Workers Leaving the Lumiere Factory. This was a 46 seconds long film that shows women laborers coming out of the Lumiere factory during the lunch hour. Lumiere brothers publicly showed several short films in 1895, each one of which was of 40 seconds duration on an average. Some of the mentionable are The Gardener, The Disembarkment of the Congress of Photographers in Lyon, Horse-Trick Riders, Fishing for Goldfish, Baby's Meal, Cordelier Square in Lyon, and bathing in the sea. One of the interesting films of the Lumiere brothers was The Arrival of a Train at La Ciotat. It is said that when the film was screened in a show, the audience was utterly frightened to see a full-size train coming towards them from the screen, and all of them ran towards the back of the room in a panic. Simultaneously, experimentation with special effects in films started to begin. None other than Thomas Edison was one of the first producers of a film with a special effect. In 1895, he made a short film called The Execution of Mary Stuart, in which he used the editor's cut just when the executioner in the film raised his axe, and then he replaced the woman acting as Mary Stuart with a mannequin which was actually seen being executed in the film. Georges Méliès, a French illusionist, actor and director, used the same trick in one of his notable films called The Vanishing Lady. In this film, with a special effect, he showed a lady being vanished by the trick of a magician acted by himself. The Haunted Castle, made in 1897 using the special effects by Méliès, was probably the first ever haunted film in history. However, his most remarkable film was A Trip to the Moon, made in 1902. In this film, he used a variety of visual effects and animations to depict a fictional story about a group of astronomers who make a journey to the moon. This 12 minutes long film shot Méliès to the peak of his success and fame. Slowly and gradually, the length of the film started to increase, and several countries in addition to France and Britain started to make bigger films. The Fall of Troy, a 52 minutes long film from Italy in 1911, was a great success. The Abyss, a 37 minutes long Danish film made in 1910, showed a combination of sex, jealousy and murder, for which the film got censored in Norway and Sweden. And Stenka Razin in 1908 was the first complete Russian narrative film. By 1920, the United States began to make almost 800 films on an average per year. The Birth of a Nation, The Big Parade, Ben-Hur, The Hunchback of Notre Dame, and the films of Charlie Chaplin such as The Kid, Satellites, The Gold Rush, and The Circus are some of the highest grossed silent films of the USA. In India, the huge success and popularity of Raja Harishchandra encouraged the making of more silent films on mythological stories such as Lanka Dahan in 1917, Kijak Vadham in 1918, Shakuntala in 1920, Vakt Vidur in 1921, A Throw of Dice in 1929, and so on. Interestingly, A Throw of Dice, starring Sita Devi and Charu Roy, was the first ever Indian film that showed on-screen kissing. The era of silent movies was a magical period when the universal language of the films across the world was the silence, and there was no language barrier for the audience to understand a film, no matter which part of the world they belonged to. With the gradual advancement of technology and more experiments with film techniques, the films broke their silence and started to talk. A new era began.
Goodbye. Tootsie, don't cry. The little choo-choo train that takes me away from you. You don't know just how sad it makes me. Kiss me kitty and then, ow, ow, do it over again. Watch for the mail, I'll never fail. If you don't get a letter, then you know I'm in jail. Hey, hey, don't cry, Tootsie, don't cry.